Star Trek, for such an enlightened picture of humanity's future, has a surprising number of races that are subject to another's whim or oppressed as a species. Orions use this as a tool, Klingons raid all the time, Cardassians occupied Bajor, and the subject of today's index, the Remans, are literally in the shadows of Romulus. Hi all, Rick here with the cultural index on the seldom seen shadow race to the Romulan people, the Remans. Their culture, and indeed maybe their origin as a species, is completely manipulated and locked with that of the Romulans, who themselves are bound to the origin of the Vulcan people. Biologically, the Remans are quite different from the Romulans but possess a number of similar traits. In appearance they are humanoid, grey-skinned with sunken eyes and cranial ridges similar to exaggerated Romulan features. They possess pointed ears and fangs. They are also bald and lithe in appearance. The species is naturally nocturnal and has evolved to adapt to that environment. Or maybe they mutated. The Reman people have far better low-light vision than most other species and acute hearing. As we see with cave-dwelling creatures and especially with deep-sea inhabitants, skin pigmentation is a defense against the sun's radiation, and the creatures who are away from the sun don't even develop a skin tone, some even becoming transparent entirely. This can be partially seen on the Remans, whose circulatory system can be seen through their skin in places. Continuing the topic of real-life influences, the species was named Reman due to the mythological connotations of the founders of Rome. Remus was betrayed by his brother Romulus, who then went on to be the sovereign of the new city. Another influence in the design was the Nosferatu depiction of a vampire to create a shadow-dwelling race of antagonists for Star Trek Nemesis, except these guys just find sunlight to be uncomfortable, not deadly, much like many a nerdy introverted gamer. Wait. As with Vulcans, the Remans are telepathic, though not all of the species seem to possess this trait, and there are a few who have a much stronger affinity for the ability. This telepathy can be used to influence others as well as themselves, and has demonstrated the ability to act as a painkiller as well as project hallucinations into even a guarded mind. Their planet of origin is Remus, also known as Romi, a tidally locked planet in the same system as Romulus. As one side faces the sun at all times, it's therefore inhospitable, and it is the night side that houses the underground complexes that they call home. These expansive networks are in fact interconnected dilithium mines that extract the rare resource, and here is the problem. Only Remans work these mines. The entire species is a slave race for the Romulan Star Empire, and therefore seldom seen by outsiders, the Romulans themselves being far from hospitable to interlopers. It is said that the notion of freedom for a Reman is an almost unimaginable concept. So long have they been under the heel of the Romulans, never knowing any different. It took the interjection of an outsider who adopted the name Shinzon before they realised that there could be another existence for their people. Some Remans were used as servants or bodyguards to Romulans, and this marked their only use outside of labour. During the Dominion War, Remans were used in ground assaults as shock troops, with little regard for their safety, so Romulan casualties could be limited. Remans were not taught either, lacking in education and practices such as medicine, which were administered by the Romulans to help maintain the status quo. Perhaps this is why one of their most practiced telepathic abilities is analgesic in nature. So long have the Remans been at the mercy of others that much of their original unique culture has been lost. From what is known, recited and passed on by words and their intricate pictograph language, they used to be clan-like and were relocated to Remus by the Romulans in times forgotten. This is where things get interesting. Genetically, the Remans are very different from their neighbours, just as Romulans are too distant from Vulcans to accept blood transfusions, but they do seem to share a number of genetic markers. This suggests a common ancestor, and as the Romulans are not native to Romulus, it stands to reason that the Remans are in fact another descendant of Vulcans. Upon arriving to the Romulan system after the Vulcan sundering, those who marched beneath the Raptor's wings settled the planets there. For some reason they exiled those sundered who still possessed the telepathic abilities of the Vulcan people. It's not clear why they did this. Perhaps they feared their power, or maybe, so entwined with the teachings of Surak were these gifts, they wanted to exorcise all aspects of the philosophy that had driven them away from Vulcan. Other sources say that some voluntarily went to mine Remus for resources, and that the precedent for a caste system was created from that. The truth could be a little of both of these. It's likely that only the Romulans know for sure, and they aren't sharing. The vast differences in evolution are often attributed to the Reman native extremophiles, which introduced mutations into the DNA of the Reman settlers until survival of the fittest took hold, leading to their current adapted form. As mentioned, the Remans have no record of their origin or their way of life pre-enslavement, but they do still have a small selection of beliefs. One such notion is that any who toil in the mines alongside the species are considered to be just as Reman as their own, with no prejudice levelled against them for being different. It was for this reason that the clone of Jean-Luc Picard was accepted by the Reman people and even able to prosper as their brother. Of course, in 2379 he went on to lead a coup against the Romulan Senate with the help of ambitious insiders, and for a short time ruled over the Star Empire. The Federation eagerly accepted his olive branch to diplomacy, hoping for a more stable peace from their long-time adversaries. However, it soon proved to be a ruse. The irony is that the Romulan people who then overthrew Shinzon efforts accepted the Federation's help, making relations at least a little smoother. In terms of other beliefs, they do not share a central religion, but there are references to the Halls of Erebus, which itself is an ancient Romulan religion that must have been adopted at some point. A rather twisted idea that had some believers enthralled was that when a Reman died, they were reborn on Romulus, where they could live in paradise. That's pretty messed up. That the notion of freedom was so foreign to them that they literally interpreted another planet as their afterlife. There are also references to older still beliefs that prophesize the return of a Reman who would be a non-native that would free them all, ushering in an age of peace for all. This individual was called the Shinzon in their native tongue, perhaps explaining where the Praetor got his name. Finally, there is the story of Tenekruvek, a Reman who ascended to an afterlife for being a great warrior. Tales such as this highlight an underlying warrior's pride, which may be a result of their use as infantry and bodyguards by the Romulans. If not toiling in the mines, they were fighting, so it's understandable that their views of themselves would be shaped by the selected experiences. In practice, the Remans in the Star Empire's military had their own rank system, removed from the Romulan chain of command, likely so that amongst themselves they could fight and command effectively, but at no point could a Reman outrank even the lowliest Romulan. According to beta material, the Reman people began to see a gradual inclusion into Romulan society through representation on the Senate, until the events of the Hobus Nova fractured the Empire. Many Remans took this opportunity to escape from Imperial rule and fled along with disillusioned Romulans to found colonies based on equality and tried to establish ties with the Klingons and the Federation for protection. Others followed a campaign of vengeance levelled against their former oppressors, notably remnants of the Star Empire's military, some of whom undid the gradual strides the Remans had made towards equality in favour of easy labour once again. What can be assured, however, is that the Remans have had a taste of freedom now, however brief, and it's unlikely they will ever return to servitude. The only leverage the Romulans had over them was their denial of anything that suggested a better life. Once word spread that there could be a new way, they seized it with both hands and lashed out against their masters. Having known no peace with outsiders, not based on oppression, and only the strong brotherhood amongst themselves for reference, has produced xenophobic tendencies from them. But we can hope that the allure of liberation outweighs their more aggressive notions. What do you think of the Remans? Do you like the idea that they are another mutated offshoot of Vulcans? And Do you think their portrayal in Star Trek Nemesis did them justice? I personally hope they don't get pushed to the wayside in future stories, as they represent an opportunity for my favourite race, the Romulans, to reform based on their future interactions. Thanks for watching this index video, and I hope you'll check out the next, which is a voted one. From the comments below, cast your vote on the option 1, the Star Wars Kalish Renowned Warriors, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Kree Empire. Thanks for watching once again, and until next time, I've been Rick, and goodbye.